Hey, Jeff.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Good.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for helping us really think about what it looks like to get under the overflow of God's love, especially in this area of loving ourselves.
Yeah, this is fun. I love these life groups. So, hey, everybody in the life group, I'm glad that you guys are doing this and hope that you find these videos helpful.
Great. Okay. So, what I want you to do is I want you to talk about a time in your life where someone, another person in your life, got in the way of you being able to see yourself as God sees you.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say it's really important, I think, that we see ourselves as God sees us, because if we don't, I think we run from God. And I think then we don't put ourselves in the flow. So that's why it's important for us to be able to have a right image. And I think it can get messed up, right? We can see ourselves as too sinful and too unworthy and too afraid that God's going to punish us or something, that we won't go and spend time with Him. Or we can see ourselves as, I don't need it. I'm good. We can compare ourselves to others and we think, I'm pretty good. So then we don't go to God for what we need there. So both of those are bad situations. So we need to have an accurate view of who we are. So I think things get in the way of that all the time. So for me, when I was I think I was about 5th grade, and I've told this story before, but I had a nun actually tell me I was going to hell. And I probably deserved it at the time. I was a little bit of a smart aleck. It was in a CCD class. And but I remember they brought in a guest speaker and they were talking about heaven and hell and that sort of a thing. And I had a legitimate question. I just wanted to know, all right, so how do you know who's going to heaven, who's going to hell? And the nun looked right at me and said, you're going to hell. And that was it. There was no explanation. And it scared me. And it in the end, years later, it kind of steered me towards wanting to know how I could be saved, how I could go to heaven. But it also really messed up my view of who God was. And I still struggle with that today, thinking God's this vindictive God who wants to, flick me in the head or punish me when I get screwed up. And so it wasn't a very balanced approach to how God sees me. There have been other times too. I remember after a camp experience, a bunch of us went on a Young Life camp, and we were at Wilderness, and we'd spent all week talking a little bit about Psalm 139. We memorized the psalm and about how God sees us and everything. And then we got into our hotel room, and I don't know whose idea this was or why we thought this was good, but we said, hey, let's go around the room now. We've talked about the things that we really like about each other, we affirm each other. Let's each name one thing that we don't like about each other.
Never a good idea.
Not a good idea. It did not end well, and it didn't even make it all the way around the circle, as people just all of a sudden were deeply wounded by this. And again, God sees those wounds, but He also sees the potential. He sees His image in us. He sees the life in us that He wants to draw out of us. Mm-hmm. And so it's really important for us to do that.
Definitely. So I know that there have been other times in your life where there have been people that have come into your life and spoken to you in a way that really has helped you see yourself more clearly as God sees you. Could you share a couple of those?
Yeah, I think, I shared a little bit about my teaching about how Dave Bartlett came to me and said, what does it mean to you to know that God believes in you? And so that was very formative in my mind. That's the one truth that, again, it took me a while to really even understand what Dave was asking me. And then to think about that and to think, is that true? Does God really believe in me? And then to read the scripture and find out that is true. God chooses me, and He has a plan for me, and He has a purpose for me, and He wants me to be His ambassador. He wants me to go and be light of the world and all these things. It's like, God, if He didn't believe in us, He wouldn't choose us to do those things. So that was very formative, and that has really counteracted that whole you're going to hell thing. Mm-hmm. And so I cling to that and hold on to that. And then I think, a few years before that, I had a Young Life leader who was my leader here in Cedar Falls growing up when I was in high school, who came to me and asked me to be a leader, to go on staff with them and to serve. And I ended up not being able to at the time. But just that they saw leadership in me, and they saw this faith in me and this combination that they wanted me to go and lead and be a leader for Jesus, I think helped me to start to see myself in new ways. It was really important as well.
Yeah. Well, you also mentioned that Cindy does this for you in probably little and big ways.
Yeah, my wife, I married up. And having a best friend for your spouse. I know that's not everybody's case, but it is for me. And if it's not for you, having other friends, other people who speak into your life Cindy does that constantly for me, and sees the good, chooses to see the good, chooses to call out the good in me, chooses to overlook some of the negative and some of the bad, or encourage me in those ways. And it can be just a simple compliment. Even I think last night, I put the dishes away, and she made some comment about, "Thank you so much for putting dishes. That was really, you didn't need to put all my salad stuff away and things like that, but you do nice things for me, and you do, and just making that comment and noticing those little things like that, they go a long ways."
They do go a long way. It's amazing how much influence we have in this whole ability to help people see themselves like God sees them.
Absolutely.
In your message on Sunday, you talked about how important it is for us to be able to forgive ourselves so that we can live more freely in our relationships with God, but also with the people in our lives. Can you tell just a little picture of what this has looked like for you?
Yeah, I think that's, seeing ourselves as God sees us allows us to accept ourselves like God accepts us, so we can get into His presence. So then those bad things that maybe we don't like about ourselves, we can go to God and we can either confess those and ask for help to overcome those and some of those sorts of things. I think in my life, one of the obvious ways that I think of for me that it's come up is in my relationship with my oldest son, and in high school, and we are very different personality types, and we discovered some of those things along the way, and I didn't always handle that well, and he would make a decision that I wasn't happy with his decision or the way he was doing some things, and then I would overreact, and I would react in ways with words that I regretted later, or I would react in ways with actions that I would regret later, and I would go and I would apologize to him, and then I think he mostly would forgive me or look past it or move on. But then I would realize that there was still this tension in this relationship, and as I would reflect on it, because I would go a few weeks or months where it's like I'd just kind of be in a bad mood, or especially in my relationship with him. And when I look back on it, when I think about it, it was largely because I was still regretting the action. I was letting what I did get in the way because I hadn't forgiven myself for it. So sometimes, the other person doesn't forgive us, and we can't do anything to make another person forgive us. But we can't let that get in the way of us forgiving ourselves. If God is going to forgive us, which He promises He will if we will seek Him for forgiveness, then we've got to be able to forgive ourselves and then let the other person's reaction be their reaction to that. But if we don't forgive ourselves, I don't think we live in the freedom to be able to pursue the relationship or to pursue the life that Jesus has for us. We just get stuck in this deep regret or remorse that just bogs us down.
Thanks, Jeff. I think this is going to be really helpful food for thought for the groups as they think about what it looks like to love themselves.
Well, I hope it is. I hope you'll share some of your own stories of what gets in the way of seeing yourself as God sees you, and maybe struggles you've had with forgiving yourselves as well.